Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor, and today I have Father Dave Nix on. We're going to be talking about The Sound of Freedom, the new Jim Caviezel movie coming out. Is it coming out in a couple weeks, or is it out?
I think it's coming out in July.
Okay, I think 4th.
July 4th, I believe.
Yeah. So you tweeted out, was it a day ago or just a couple hours ago, something like that, about how you got to see a sneak preview a couple years ago. So can you tell us about sort of why you got to see a sneak preview and tell us a little bit about your thoughts about it?
Well, thanks for having me on your podcast. It's a great line. It's a great name for a podcast because, I mean, the narrative is so central to everyone's life and the gospel. So as I'm sure your listeners know, Sound of Freedom is a new movie following the Anti-Trafficking Movement, specifically Tim Ballard, who, yes, is a Mormon. I was talking to a friend last night how we need some of these mercenary Catholic groups, but Tim Ballard started an organization called Operation Underground Railroad, and what they do is they come into foreign countries, probably domestically also, often with automatic weapons, and they rescue children who are being trafficked. Probably most people don't know that there's more slaves in the world now than there ever has been in history. Even more than the transatlantic slave trade. There's 40 million slaves in the world. 12% of those are sex slaves. 24% of those are children, and 99% of those 40 million are girls or women. So we're looking at 40 million slaves in the world. And so there's some Catholics out there who knew that we need to start making movies on that to bring light to this. I was chaplain on the set for Cabrini in Buffalo, New York 2 summers ago. Mike Parrott brought me up there, and that's where I got to know Leo Severino, who's a producer, both Cabrini and Sound of Freedom. They also made Bella, the pro-life movie you've probably seen. And then Alejandro Monteverde from Mexico. He also did Cabrini and Bella and Sound of Freedom and several other movies. And so when I was talking to Leo, I just mentioned my own involvement in the anti-trafficking world. And I said, I'd really love to see a preview of that, but they only had the big movie screen or reels or whatever you call them. I guess they're not actually giant reels anymore, but they had to rent out a little movie theater in Buffalo and then invited myself and several other people. So really the movie's been produced for, I think, 3 or 4 years. Then there was a bunch of spiritual attack, and then I think Fox had the movie and they didn't release it. And then if I understand correctly, and I'm sorry to Eduardo and Leo and them if I'm wrong about this, my understanding is Eduardo Verasti then just bought it after Fox kicked the can down the road a lot, and then it's going to be released by Eduardo. And I did see Eduardo. There was an article on the Shalom Times or something yesterday that said he is open to Elon Musk letting this just be seen on Twitter.
Oh.
But to answer your question, I was a chaplain on the set for Cabrini. I heard about Sound of Freedom. This was a full 2 summers ago. And I said, can I watch? So I actually got to see it with both Leo and Alejandro and Mike in the theater, the actual producers.
And how would you rate it?
It's a good movie. It's not something that you want to probably invite your wife to with a big thing of popcorn. It's very hard to watch, obviously, because we're not just talking about, I mean, there's 16, 14, 12, 10, there's 8-year-olds being trafficked, and you don't see, the graphic material of what happens behind trafficking, but it's a hard movie to see when he discovers files of 6 and 7-year-olds in that type of trafficking. So it's not a fun movie.
Yeah. And I mean, nowadays, most movies, I don't even think fun movies are fun anymore.
Yeah.
They're filled with such garbage that most movies aren't successful anyways. So I'm hoping that something with real substance actually succeeds.
When we're at the same conference here, Abby Johnson spoke this morning, and she mentioned the movie Unplanned, the movie that was made after her best-selling book. I would compare Sound of Freedom to Unplanned in the sense that there's a triumph of saving children, but it's also really hard to see that we live in a time, probably the darkest time in history, between abortion and sex slavery. I was trying to explain my passion for both of these to a priest about 10 years ago, and he finally got it. And he distilled down everything I'd explained for an hour to two things. He said, okay, so abortion takes kids' babies. Sorry. He said, so abortion steals their bodies, trafficking steals their souls. I said, that's a really good way to understand that. And so this is why, besides church reform, I think the two most important things all of us need to be involved in is ending abortion and ending child trafficking.
Yeah. And, one of the, I think from what I could tell by the trailer, sort of the Jim Caviezel's character is working for the government, but basically has to go outside of the government to save these children. So these organizations that are supposed to be protecting children and protecting you'd think would be the people that were going out there to destroy human trafficking seem to be hindering it. Is that kind of the message or an aspect of the movie?
So when he moves from one of the United States border-based three-letter agencies to start OUR, that's really, if I remember correctly, because I saw this movie 2 years ago, his movement from the government to starting his own private agency to save kids is the first 10 or 15 minutes of the movie.
Okay.
But it is true that he was working, I want to say, for U.S. border. See, here's the thing. You got to remember, this was 20 years ago, before all of these groups got totally corrupt under Obama and Biden.
Okay.
So like you and I hear of, and I'm not saying that everyone who works for Border Patrol right now is bad, but I mean, 20 years ago, I'm sure you and I trusted the FBI, right? And we clearly don't now.
Yeah.
Maybe you and I were naive back then, but something has gotten a lot more rotten.
Well, 20 years ago, I was like 4.
Okay, well, you're a lot younger.
But
than
yeah.
me. But the point is that
Yeah.
the movie, he only at the beginning of the movie is he working for the government, and then he starts his own private organization. I can remember if it's at 10 minutes in or 60 minutes in, but that follows the reality of Tim Ballard's life, that he used to work for the government. That's where he cut his teeth on all this stuff, and then he went and founded Operation Underground Railroad.
Okay, so is one of the main groups fighting human trafficking not part of the government? Is that the major bulk, or are governments a big part of fighting human trafficking?
It's difficult to say because, I mean, I don't know how the algorithms on your podcast work, if this is going on YouTube or whatever, but is this on YouTube?
Yeah.
All right, so then I have to use code because basically what appears to be anti-trafficking in the United States is often a front for trafficking at this point.
Okay.
In other words, the United States government traffics children, and we just threw out some bad algorithms there. But now if you there's groups like IRJ, IJM, International Justice Mission. They'll go into places like the Philippines and train Filipino police officers. Now, is that a guarantee that these Filipino police officers being trained by IJM is based in Washington, D.C.? It's like a Protestant evangelical organization. And one of the ways that they've found is the best way to rescue is to train local police. And so they'll come in, they'll train like Filipino police officers how to recognize trafficking and how to save them. They've had some big rescues. Is there a guarantee through that education that everyone who works for the Filipino police is going to be uncorrupt and is not viable? No. But you do have governments that are open to training and are trying to stop trafficking. And then you have other governments like our own that are now complicit in trafficking. So
what would you have a specific part of the government that would be most complicit? Or is it just very general? Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure we're gonna throw off a lot of algorithms here.
It's okay. Whatever happens. It'll be on Rumble if it's.
Yeah, you may have to bounce this to Rumble. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but there was a oversight committee. Someone was just speaking. It had millions of views on YouTube, and she explained the organizations that were complicit in trafficking in Biden's government right now. I can't remember the name of the organizations that she mentioned. Another unpopular topic, we're here at the Cancel Priest Conference. The Catholic Charities on the border of Texas has been found guilty of trafficking children. And I put up on my Telegram channel a complicit clergy video of this. And then I thought, there's no way this is true. I took it down. And then I called Jesse Romero, an ex-LA cop. His parents are from Mexico. And I asked Father Altman, I said, was this complicit clergy video true? Because I took it down. I just found it too sensational, too bombastic. They both doubled down and said, no, it is true. And what Catholic Charities is doing on the border of Texas is they're being complicit in trafficking.
Yikes. And Catholic Charities, also, if you send me the link to that video, I'll just put it in the description so people can find it.
Because I know it sounds too bombastic to believe, but it's true.
So Catholic Charities, from what I understand, is that one organization, like sort of a huge organization outside
it
of?
It may be, but I know every diocese has their own also.
Okay, so they're not necessarily. So would you say that maybe not all Catholic Charities could be complicit?
I don't know. The more I go down these rabbit holes, like, you know, who you should interview for your podcast is Michael Hickborn, who's here. But his work with Lepanto Institute has demonstrated that groups I used to give a lot of money to, Catholic Relief Services, they're pumping contraception and stuff all over the place. So it's very hard to find Catholic organizations that are not supporting contraception, sterilization, abortion, LGBT, and even child trafficking at this point.
That's terrifying. And I mean, just in the secular world too, they use words that make people feel good, and then they take money and then do things that are incredibly detrimental to all of society. So it just seems that it has seeped into Catholic Charities and to Catholic organizations.
Yeah, I mean, where they did the expose, I believe it was El Paso. So you're right. We could be speaking specific to Catholic Charities down in El Paso or whatever border town they did this in. But see, this is why Jim Caviezel's character that he plays, Tim Bell, this is why we now have these private organizations starting for this stuff. I had dinner with a friend last night, and he has friends who are mercenaries in Spain who will go down to Africa with automatic weapons. They saved Boko Haram Nigerian girls who were Christian. Sorry, they went and they saved Christian Nigerian girls from Boko Haram Muslims. And they went down. Now, you don't read about this stuff in the newspaper. There's no movies made about them yet. They're a group of Spanish mercenaries that are Catholic. They're never going to get bishops to support them like the Knights Templar did, because bishops nowadays, everything for them is liability. You know, they say that the chanceries are run by lawyers. And then governments aren't going to support mercenary organizations. But we have Catholic mercenaries coming down with automatic weapons, not supported by dioceses, not supported by governments, and they're coming and they're rescuing kids.
That would be an incredible movie.
It would. And that's where, I mean, I think Tim Ballard had a little bit more of a high profile, but I'd love to tell this to Leo, to say, just remember, we got Catholics, what this Mormon is doing.
Oh yeah, that's pretty great.
And by the way, Leo and Alejandro are really great Catholics. They love the Latin Mass, and they're both great Catholics themselves.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's just it's amazing what you can do with movies too. It just with storytelling in general, is you can get sort of the hard ideas, hard concepts into people's sort of faces in an emotional driving way. Because I mean, our society is purely run on emotion at this point.
And I'm not speaking for Leo in this, or Eduardo Verastegui or Jim Caviezel, but I do believe I had heard one reason that there was such an enormous delay in releasing this movie is because there's so much trafficking in Hollywood. I mean, the left pretends like they're against child trafficking, but if you look at how much even non-Christian people like Corey Feldman, these people have come out and said how much trafficking is in Hollywood. Of course, Hollywood does not want a movie coming out against child trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, yes, nobody wants to shine a light right at themselves.
Exactly. Exactly. So I believe that's one reason this movie's been produced for 4 years, and we're just finally getting ready to see it in the theaters right now.
Though I've understood that movies and productions like these can take a really long time, even with everything working out.
The thing is, it's been made for several years and not released. Not just filmed 4 years ago. It's been produced for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, so I bet Jim Caviezel has been working on plenty of other projects since.
But you got to remember, he got canceled in Hollywood too. So
did he get canceled because of The Passion, or did
more
he
or less? Yeah.
Okay, I was wondering if if there was anything else specifically, but I mean, in a way, it seems a little bit like his. I don't know if you're familiar with Person of Interest and his.
I've heard it's good. I didn't watch it, but I heard it's pretty good. That was like, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the first 3 seasons are.
Okay.
It gets a little woke in certain
bummer.
areas. In the latter seasons, you can always tell series and movies and stuff like that based on the time they came out. So
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
if a movie's on the cusp between like Obama's presidency and Trump's presidency, it's going to at some point become very woke, and you're just going to find LGBT stuff, propaganda, in it just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
So yeah, Person of Interest is I've done a few season reviews on my channel about them.
Oh, good.
But yeah, no, it seems a little bit like he's reviving a little bit of his character from that.
Okay.
Like I said, I haven't seen the movie, but just from sort of the action sort of.
My only criticism of the movie is he takes on an entire cartel on a mountain by himself. And I asked Leo after the movie out on the sidewalk in Buffalo, I was like, was that part real? He's like, we use a little artistic license for that. I was like, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that makes sense. That doesn't sound like it really happened. Though, I mean, I think people were complaining about the John Wick movies and stuff like that because they've gotten more sort of fantastical. But that's just the way people don't really understand reality. So it's almost like to sell something to an audience these days, you have to have something sort of fantastical to draw their attention.
And really, Tim Ballard's story is pretty fantastic. I mean, if you think about it, most people don't even want to believe there's this many killed kids in trafficking. And so he starts an organization with automatic weapons to go rescue 9-year-olds from grown men. It's like, this is 2023. We're told by the world of flesh and the devil that the world nowadays is a lot better than it was 150 years ago. So that's another reason nobody wants to believe this, is because it's an indictment on our own. Like you said, nobody wants to shine a light in their own eyes. This is where we're at in 2023. Nobody really wants to admit that we're turning a blind eye to worse slavery than anything that happened even 150 years, as bad as it was 150 years ago. There's simply more people in slavery right now.
Yeah, I've talked a lot with my mother, and she's had to sort of learn to accept how terrible sort of the world has always been. And I like that generation, her generation specifically, and I don't, maybe it's not everyone obviously, but so many have bought into a false positive belief on how the world has been. And I think it's definitely really difficult for them to accept that. So yeah,
that's right.
Father, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Connor.
I really appreciate this you coming on to talk about this movie, which it's just perfect how it's coming out. Just
I'd encourage people to go see it and get involved in ending trafficking through donations and prayer and anything that you can. There's some great organizations out there that are run by Catholics right now to help with the recovery of it. Do you mind if I mention those two?
Sure.
There's one called Avodah Collective, AVODAH Collective in Denver, Colorado. And then in San Diego, there's Children of the Immaculate Heart. They're both, that's not towards the side of rescue. That's more the side of recovery for girls and women who've been trafficked. And they're both run by Catholics. So 2 organizations I would promote.
Gotcha. Father, would you mind ending us with prayer?
Sure. How about a blessing?
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
Dominus vobiscum.
Spirit.
Benedictio Dei omnipotentis Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti descendit super vos et manet semper. Amen.
Thank you, Father.
Thanks for having me, Connor.
Please, guys, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and like this video so more people hear about this movie and hear about how the dangers of human trafficking and how we need to shine a light in areas that people don't want to shine lights on. So,
Amen.
Thank you.